Hi, it's me. My name's Scott. This is my channel, CineRam, where I talk about movies and movie-related stuff. I'm starting a new series today with this sort of like what's a big movie summer kind of thing, big summer movie season. So I wanted to get started with that. But before I do, I wanted to let you know that Luke Ryan, aka Razorwire Reviews, is starting a brand new series on his channel. Just posted the first video yesterday, I think, which is all about him sort of determining what are the 50 greatest movies of all time. He's probably taking a lot of other people's opinions into consideration, but primarily it's his own view on starting with like the silent movies from way back in the day up through the current era. The 50 best movies, the ones that you'd actually rate higher than 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10 or 4 stars out of 4 or what have you. So I'm looking forward to that. He just put up his intro video and should have the first video in the series up any time now. Link to his channel is below. The series is basically going to focus, my series is going to focus on summer movie seasons. Some of the big ones, and what made them big and what made them kind of have the impact that they have. Maybe talk a little about a few big flops and disappointments that had an impact. I'm also going to do a little bit at the end of each video on stuff I've seen recently, so make it kind of a vlog as well as, sort of analysis, I guess you could say. A few weeks back, in April, we had the summer movie preview come out. Hopefully you can see that okay. There's Chris Pratt along with the dinosaurs. There's a new Jurassic Park movie coming out. Of course, we've already had two very, very large hits with Infinity War and Deadpool 2 just come out, and our first kind of sort of disappointment, Solo, a Star Wars story, the new Solo Han Solo movie. Young Han Solo didn't quite make the bank that they wanted it to, but it is a good movie. I enjoyed it. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. I was looking over this. Every year, Entertainment Weekly puts out these issues, along with all the big, pop culture websites. What's big this summer? Most of it is like sequels to, franchises that have done well, or even some that haven't done well. They're like going to try again. Along with a few more or less original offerings. This one's looking particularly big. Like I said, we had this summer, we had Deadpool, we got Han Solo, we got the Avengers, we're going to have Jurassic Park, we're going to have Mission Impossible, The Incredibles, along with some other really big stuff. And I was just wondering, is this going to be like the highest grossing summer movie season of all? We've already off to a roaring start. Avengers may have opened in the last week of April, but it's going to, still keep playing for several weeks and make huge bank. Along with The Incredibles 2, I think The Incredibles 2 is going to do extremely well. And Jurassic Park probably, and some other stuff will probably have some surprises, but I thought it would be fun to kind of go through and look at trends and look at the stuff that was successful in past summer movie seasons. And for those of you who have sort of been keeping up with that stuff over the years, you probably are already aware that the true summer movie season as it exists now started in the mid-'70s with Jaws in 1975, directed by Steven Spielberg, and then 2 years later, George Lucas directed the first Star Wars movie, and that was an incredible success and a really, the biggest game changer you could imagine. Thus we have the summer movie season. It's not like people didn't go to movies during the summer prior to 1975, but Jaws and Star Wars made a summer an event for movies. And now everyone looks forward to what the big stuff is that comes out every summer. What is going to be successful, what's going to be good, of course, what's going to be entertaining, what's going to be the most exciting, the most spectacular, blah, 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 what's going to be the most satisfying continuation of a story that got started years ago with other films. With each one of these videos, I'm going to focus on a particular summer movie season. I may not do all of them, but I'm going to try and focus on the ones that I feel are most significant. So this first video, I'm going to actually cover a few years, 1975 through 83, go through some of the big hits. And I wasn't, at this point in my life, I wasn't going to the movies myself, all on my own. I turned 10 years old in 1983. Sorry about the noise. I turned 10 years old, and at that time, I pretty much just went to whatever my parents took us to. My mom and dad would pack my brother and I into the car and say, okay, we're going to go see the new Star Trek or the new Superman movie. We'd be like, yeah, all right, and we didn't make those decisions ourselves. So I wasn't really aware of what was coming out and what could be good and everything like that. Plus, there were tons of movies that I was just not interested or scared of, as the case may be. Like, for example, with Jaws. I was 2 years old when Jaws came out. No, actually, I was 1. No, I would have turned 1 in '74, so I would have turned 2. Yeah, I was 2 years old when Jaws came out. There's no way that my parents would have ever taken me to see this movie. There's no way I could have handled it. Yeah, it was a huge hit. Everyone was scared to, as they say, go back in the water after the film. Spielberg's big breakthrough as a director. He came back with several more hits in the years after that. Huge movie. And in '76, the top movie that summer was The Omen. There were bigger hits that came out, but not in the summer. In fact, a lot of the big hits seemed to come out in November, December of '76. Most of the data that I'm working with comes from Wikipedia and IMDb. I'm looking up all the box office figures. So I'm looking at worldwide box office for these right now. And The Omen was ranked number 5 out of movies that came out that year. It was the highest summer release on the list. And the closest one to that, also summer release, was Midway, which is like an airplane or airport disaster movie, which I've never seen. That was number 10. So everything else on the list, everything on the top 10 from 1976 did not come out in summer. It was like earlier or later in the year. Most of them came out in November, December. I've seen The Omen. The Omen's a really good movie. I've seen actually those three, the 3 movies in the Omen series, that initial Omen series. Then the following year, of course, we had the very first Star Wars movie, A New Hope, Episode 4. Obviously, one of the biggest movies ever, one of the most influential movies ever, just in terms of, just what people are expecting to see and what they're looking forward to during the summer. And now it seems like we have movies like this coming out all year long. I mean, they come out in March and February. They come out in October. There's no sort of restriction on summer movies just coming out, or these kind of spectacle movies just coming out during the months of May through August. And of course, summer really wasn't like May initially. It was just pretty much June through August because of the school season, I guess. Kids got out of school in June, and so that's when they would release all those big movies because kids had lots of time. They didn't have to go to school. They didn't have to study, do homework. They go to the movies and spend their money on the movies and theme parks and the beach and whatever else they do. So that was the time to do it. And so they cottoned onto that and went, okay, great. The studios are like, okay, let's get some big movies for summer and get everyone make a pile of money. So Star Wars, of course, really sort of solidified the whole summer blockbuster thing. And the other big movie that came out that year was Smokey and the Bandit. Burt Reynolds is like the biggest movie star in the world at that point. That came out in May of that year. So technically summer. I'm going by May because that's how summer is these days. It's May through August pretty much. Huge hit, but of course Star Wars was the thing that just blew everyone's socks off, and I know I was obsessed with it. I was 4 years old when it came out. I don't know if I saw it right away. I probably maybe waited until I was 5 or so, because it did play in theaters for like an entire year. Movies didn't go to video. There was no home video back then, and they didn't go to television right away either. So movies played for weeks and months, before they finally left theater. And that's what happened with Star Wars, only a lot more so. A year. It played in theaters for an entire year at least. So the following year after that, 1978, the biggest summer hit was Grease, the musical with John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. Still very much a very well-liked movie. The summer release right behind that one was Animal House, a classic frat comedy with John Belushi. John Landis is the director on that. Also very influential. Started a whole sort of style of comedic film, the raunchy college comedy, which spawns the raunchy high school comedy, and all this other thing. The Raunchy Bachelor, party comedy, I guess, is that a genre? I don't know, I kind of feel like it is. It's a mini genre. And the following year after that, 1979, the top summer release was a horror movie in the vein of The Omen called The Amityville Horror. It was the #2 hit of the year. And I was actually wondering at this point, where do the Superman movies fall on this? Because I see them in the top 10s. But as it turns out, Superman 1 and Superman 2 from 78 and 1980, they came out in December. That's so weird to think that they came out at the end of the year at this particular time. But smart strategy, I guess, because there wasn't a lot of spectacle to compete with it even back then. Nowadays, of course, it's like, you know, things come out in December, they come out in November, they come out in, you know, and the time to really clear, you know, the way for making big money without a lot of competition, of course, is in the off seasons in February, like Black Panther was, or in March with 300. We'll get to that a little bit later. So anyway, Amityville Horror was #2, and then Rocky 2 was #3 that year. So they were the big summer hits. And the first Rocky movie didn't come out in summer; it came out at the end of the year in December, like a lot of these other big hits. 1980, the second Star Wars movie, The Empire Strikes Back. Biggest hit of the year. Following behind that was the comedy spoof Airplane. Really sorry about that noise. It's warm out right now, but it's not so warm that we need to close up the house and turn on the AC, so we have the windows open and everything like that. Anyway, so Airplane, huge, and that started a whole genre of its own with the spoof movies and the, you know, gag-a-minute type deal. You know, Mel Brooks was very popular, of course, around then, but his jokes came at a much slower rate. He had like 1 or 2 big jokes per scene, whereas with movies like Airplane and The Naked Gun, they became like relentless. So Empire was actually the lowest grossing of the 3 movies, but still the biggest hit of the year. And of course, how could it not be with that twist at the end, right? Yeah. So 1981, the first Indiana Jones movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, comes out in summer. Right behind it is the Dudley Moore comedy Arthur. In '82, one of the biggest hits of Spielberg's career, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Massive, massive hit. Everybody loved this movie to death, just absolutely loved it. So that's Spielberg, 2 #1 movies in a row, both coming out in summer, both directed by Steven Spielberg. Amazing. Another summer release in '82 that did very well was the drama An Officer and a Gentleman with Richard Gere, Louis Gossett Jr., and Deborah Winger. I've never seen that movie, but you know, it's very well liked apparently, and was very, very successful. Not really what you'd think of normally as a summer movie, but there's always counter-programming when it comes to summer. You know, there's always dramas and comedies and period pieces sort of sprinkled in there as a sort of a palate cleanser, a way to sort of get a change of pace from all the noise and bombastic stuff that comes out. So even back then they started like, yeah, you know, let's do something different for summer. People go to see that, and it was a big hit, and probably got some Oscar nominations. But I'm not really sure about that. I think so, but you know, I don't recall offhand. And finally, 1983, of course, the third Star Wars movie, Return of the Jedi, biggest hit of the year. A comedy with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd called Trading Places came out. That was another big hit, also summer hit. And I should mention Flashdance as well. Flashdance was a really big hit, although it came out in April rather than in May. But, you know, it probably played for a good number of weeks before leaving theaters. So you could sort of consider that a summer movie because people went to see it during the summer, I'd expect. So that is 1975 through 1983. The next video doing this is going to be 84. There were 3 really, really, really huge blockbusters that came out in 84, so I'll talk about them a little bit more in depth. But that was actually the year that I sort of really started paying attention to the kinds of movies that were coming out, and started reading the newspaper and seeing the ads and everything like that, and started becoming culturally aware rather than just, you know, took whatever, you know, my parents gave me as far as pop culture. And I was way behind a lot of other kids. A lot of other kids were going to the movies all by themselves. They watched tons of TV that I never saw. I was not culturally aware when I was 10, 11 years old. You know, it's just how it was. So, on to with Solo. Solo, of course, came out last weekend. I saw it Saturday, and I thought it was really good. I have a hard time sort of connecting it with the other Star Wars movies, not just because of the main character being played by a completely different person. Alden Ehrenreich from Hail Caesar played the cowboy movie star in Hail Caesar as Han Solo, and Emilia Clarke is the girl that he's quite fond of and wants to save from a terrible life, and he does that. He wants to do that by basically earning enough money to buy his own ship, and coming to Corellia, where they both grew up, and rescuing her. He meets Chewbacca, he meets Lando, he wins the Millennium Falcon in a game, he does the Kessel Run, and I don't want to get into a lot of spoilers, sorry about that noise. I don't want to get into a lot of spoilers about what happens in the movie, but one of the reasons why I sort of had a hard time with it was because, yeah, that's super loud, was because it seemed like they were trying to cram too much stuff that had been referred to into this one movie right here. You know, prequels are kind of tough for me because there's certain things that they have to sort of lead into the thing that you've already seen, but they also have to include a lot of stuff that you're aware of, stuff that's only just referred to. I mean, the Kessel Run and the 12 parsecs thingy and Lando and the deal, or the Millennium Falcon game or whatever, the game where he won the Falcon. All that stuff is referred to in the first Star Wars and Empire. And they felt like they had to cram it all into one movie. You know, he meets Chewbacca. You know, Chewbacca becomes his ally, really close associate, and there's other characters in the movies. But you know, by necessity, they sort of have to fall by the wayside so that it can be Han and Chewie in the end, just the two of them hanging out and pulling jobs in the Falcon, and that's sort of the necessity of the thing. So. It wasn't like super exciting. Some of it was exciting, like the train heist sequence I thought was really good. But the Kessel Run itself was seemed to drag on a bit, and everyone's like, oh, it's really tense, and are they going to make it? Are they going to make it? Well, of course they are, because we know that for a fact. It's hard to really think of it. Obviously, this being made by Lucasfilm, it's canon. This is like the official version of Han Solo's past, this period in his life, where all these big, colossal events are sort of crammed into just, you know, a couple of years. But it's hard, you know, it's hard not to think about it as fan fiction, you know, somebody speculating based on these things that have already been mentioned, what happened with Han, and sort of this need to cram all these events that we are aware of based on the previous films. All into one particular movie, just taking care of it all in one film. And if they don't feel like Solo's a big enough hit, they might not do another one, which I would be fine with. You know, that would be okay by me. Because I'm actually more intrigued about the Emilia Clarke character. Her name is Kira. And what we find out about what's happened to her since Han's been away, he meets her again. He's looking to get a ship of his own so that he can save her from having to scrounge around and steal things on Corellia for the rest of her life. But it turns out she's had adventures of her own, including working for this gangster played by Paul Bettany. Paul Bettany, by the way, is really, really good in the movie. He's terrific. At the end of the movie, you know that Han goes one way and Kira goes another if she doesn't get killed. Because Han eventually ends up with Leia, and there's no Kira in his life at that point, you know, so she's off doing her own thing. And when I look at the circumstances around Kira, I'm thinking, well, that could be sort of a one-off. You know, she's this character from his past, you know, and this affects him in a certain way, how things end with her, and she's going off, she can be in some other part of the galaxy and we never see her again. But because there was an appearance with an older Star Wars character, a Star Wars character from a previous movie, who has this relationship, this association with the Emilia Clarke character, that made me think, oh, they're, you know, starting something for a future film, okay? This is going to pay off later on. Because there's no reason to include that character, other than just say, ooh, isn't it cool that we see that character again? Having him having this connection with the Emilia Clarke character sort of alludes to there's going to be some other stuff involving at least, if not the two of them, then at least the Emilia Clarke character in a future film. If she shows up in Episode 9, she'll be a lot older, but she could be played by Helen Mirren or something. You know, or she could show up in another standalone movie, one of the other spin-off movies. I forget, there's a particular term that they're using for the Star Wars story films, you know, Rogue One, they're anthology movies. I'm not sure if that's the right term for it, but sometimes they're called anthology movies. But I'm thinking Kira could end up, because she's connected to this older Star Wars character, they could be setting us up for her appearing later on with other Star Wars characters in a future movie. So it could be another spin-off, or it could be episode 9 or something else. But Qi'ra could show up again. That's like kind of what it seemed like they were setting up for. So I'm kind of curious about what's going to happen with her. More so than I am with Han and Chewie and Lando, because we already know what happens to them. You know, that's obvious. Also, I have to wonder if Lando is going to be played by Billy D. Williams again in episode 9. Given that they don't have Luke anymore, they don't have Han, they don't have Leia, you know, who else is left? You know, there's Chewie, there's R2, there's 3PO, and there's Lando, and that's kind of it. So maybe Lando will be in episode 9. Maybe Billy D. Williams will come back. I don't know, but it's going to be another year and a half before we find out. So you know, we have to make do with speculating on what Rey and Kylo and Poe and Finn are up to. I'm fine with that, you know. I, of course, was huge into Star Wars when I was a kid. Star Wars was everything to me. I loved Star Trek and Superman movies, but Star Wars was, you know, the bee's knees, as they say. And it's less so now. As I've said before, you know, if there's one franchise that I'm just totally into right now, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Infinity War was, you know, terrific. I really liked it a lot. Seen it twice now. But yeah, Star Wars is something that I'm looking forward to. But if they never made any more Star Wars movies after Episode 9, I would be like, that's fine. You know, I'm okay. I don't need, you know, to have Star Wars, new Star Wars movies for the rest of my life. But I'm going to get them because Lucasfilm is going to put them out, you know. They're going to get people to make them, you know, now that, you know, George Lucas isn't doing them anymore. You know, like, we can hire anybody to make them. Except Colin Trevorrow, you know, he's out. Anyway, so that's my video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sorry if it was a little bit too long, but I have another one for you next week on summer movies from 1984, and talk about what else. Oh, I also saw The Commuter. With Liam Neeson. It's basically like a remake of Non-Stop. You know, it's the same plot. It's just on a train instead of a plane. So, thank you very much for watching. Be sure and check out, of course, Luke's channel, his new series, and also the link to my Facebook page is below, as if you'd like to take that look at that as well. Thanks again. Later.